I want to create an optional video to just quickly show you and let you listen to two different Reaktor instruments that push these techniques of wave scan and also granular to the limit. Really, in my opinion, these are two of the more amazing instruments I've ever come across. The first one is Dron-E, and this allows you to play back up to 4 different samples as well as skip through a bunch of different samples in real time. And that's what your starting source is. And you can then adjust the playback speed on all of those. You can do a lot, and we're not going to have time to go through this instrument. One day I spent like 6 hours just messing with this instrument, and I still feel like I don't fully understand it. But one thing I do know is when you load in your own samples to this thing, which you can do by clicking up here, you can replace these samples with your own. You can just get some unbelievable textures even just by going through some of the presets. So this is the Initialized Patch, and it's basically just playing through one sample back and forward. Let's go up higher. Right, gets to the end, then it comes back. But we could load in 4 different samples, and we could even jump between samples in real time. And let's just bring up this first one, Lost Locator. So this one's only using one sample, but it's jumping between a bunch of different samples. And it looks like it's going between sample 87 and 103, which we would again be able to find from the sample bank. But let's just take a listen to this and just hear what it's doing. It's just amazing, and we could even turn on another sample. And there is one oscillator in here, and that's just a sub. So it's just a sine wave that you can turn off if you want. Let's just go through a few other of these presets so you can hear this guy in action. This one's using 2 samples. And you can see, obviously, we could adjust the playback speed on each of those individually and even have that be modulated by something else. So this mod matrix down here is really in depth when you start to dive deep with this instrument. We could try scanning through to different samples. So to wrap things up, this is just an amazing instrument and something that if you go through some of these presets, you'll just be blown away, especially when you realize that it's all being generated by samples and wave scanning through those samples, a lot of times very slowly. So this would be a great time if you ever do decide to check out Dron-E to load up like just a sample of your own voice and have that go all the way across the keyboard, just map the whole way through and listen to the sort of results that you can get. I can guarantee you really can't get anything like this anywhere else. The other instrument I felt I had to show you inside of Reaktor is the Grain Cube. And this is one of the crazier instruments I've ever come across. It doesn't use a traditional MIDI input. It's just going to be generating sound for you the minute you turn it on. And so you'd really work with this by having your DAW recording the output, and then you go back later and find moments that are really inspiring for you that you can then work with and use and possibly even resample on your own. So each of these 4 slots is identical, but it's not really identical because we have this randomization going on at the bottom that's pretty much randomizing all of these different controls and parameters that you find inside of each grain cloud. So what we have is a traditional kind of wave scan / granular engine inside each of these, and then you can control some of the parameters or just leave it up to random. So I'm just going to go ahead and turn this on and just sort of randomize things a few times for you so you can hear how far this instrument can go. And you see we have random controls for this reverb. I'm just gonna go in first, choose a preset. Let's go with like echoic. And let's randomize it a few times. Why don't we randomize this cloud? And the longer you let this go, sometimes you just get some really awesome results. And if for some reason we only want to have one of these randomized and the other sitting static, we can turn those other ones off. And now we're just working here with the first one, or the first one's the only one that's moving around and changing. But we didn't catch the other ones in a very good time, obviously. So let's turn them all back on again and let this thing just go crazy. So you can see that even the randomizer is being randomated. Randomated, is that the right word? Certainly being controlled. It's jumping around. Let's just let it go for about another minute and see if we get something really interesting. And sometimes you might want to move some things around yourself. So let's choose all of these to like long and dense. Nice, this is something I could definitely use. And I think my favorite part about this is you're never going to get the same sound twice. It's just basically mathematically impossible unless you turn all of the randomization off and you set something up that's static, but that really wouldn't be the point of an instrument like this. And I just wanted to show this to you because what I think it proves is that pretty much all of these synthesis concepts that we've talked about thus far are very simple. You can wrap your head around all of them. But then when you get people who are a little bit, ahead of the curve, people who are arguably a little crazy in a good way, in a very good way, you get instruments like this, right? Where if I was to just open this up, I would be completely overwhelmed. But I could break this down and I could see right from the get-go, right? I would go in here and I'd probably turn off these other 3. I'd probably go in and I'd turn off the actual like randomization that's going on here. And I would just work with this first grain cloud. And then see, oh, all of these are the same. And when I put them together, I'm getting like this much bigger granular texture. And then you put on the reverb here, the Space Maestro. That's just a reverb, right? We have here a refractor. That's just a visualizer. We don't even need to have this on at all. And then I could go down and I could then just, let the instrument do its thing, know how it's working, and hopefully be able to use some of these sounds in my own productions. However, and this is something we'll get to in the concluding presentation, one thing to always be aware of is that the farther outside the box you go, the less likely the average listener is willing to go there with you. So you just have to know that, yes, there are some great experimental techniques out there, but you need to use them in the appropriate context. So if you're going for, some kind of EDM summer festival song, this sort of an instrument's not going to be useful for you. But if you're sound designing a film, or I should say scoring a film, or if you're working on something a little more experimental, or you have like a B section or an interlude, sounds like this work great. Throw those things in there, right? Don't have the whole thing be cookie cutter from start to finish. But this is something we'll talk about in the concluding presentation as well. So thanks for your attention, and I hope you've seen some really cool things and also heard some really cool things, because that's what it's all about.